going to start this series off with the PlayStation Move Starter Pack. Hooray! Now, I'm guessing Sony want you to buy this if you want the full experience. Now, it's not quite all that, for reasons I'll explain in a moment. Anyway, I'll start with one of the most important components and then work my way up to the controller, I guess. The camera. This is a really good camera. I'll keep it short, but it's well worth it just as a webcam. You can get drivers for the Mac and Windows and probably Linux. It's my webcam of choice anyway. I've got 2 of them now. Hooray. This thing, it tracks the motion of the control. I think it's really good that Sony are getting everyone to get these now. No one really bought them when only a couple of games used them. The demo disc. Now, it's about 50% shovelware, Sports Champions, Start the Party, iPet and Echo Chrome. All excellent games. Start the Party and iPet particularly, very good for children. iPet works much better with the motion controller than with the shitty cards. The cards depended on good natural light, and you just don't get much of that here in the UK. No, it was pretty bad. Sports Champions seems excellent, but I think it's a good idea they didn't bundle that. I think it would have attracted too many comparisons to the Wii. I do think it would have made much more sense to bundle Start the Party with this. It would have just been the obvious thing, in my mind, for them to do. This collection of demos is completely crazy. You could just get them off the PlayStation Network anyway. One of the main reasons the Wii sold so well to casual gamers is because it came with Wii Sports. I think Start the Party does a better job of illustrating the sort of augmented reality stuff which the Move is so good at, which the competitors aren't quite so good at. There are some seriously naff games on there as well, and they're not going to help sell the thing. I'm glad they didn't bundle any of those terrible games in. It would have been a bit like when they used to sell the Amiga with bundles of really bad software almost constantly. Never understood that. Anyway, the next and most important thing, obviously the controller. It's a good weight. It's bigger than I expected it to be. It's got a big squishy ball on the end. It's about the same length as a Wii remote, but with obviously the ball on the end. It's more ergonomic than the Wii remote, and the button configuration is more streamlined. It doesn't have as many things going on here. It's actually, in my experience, much better for tiny child hands. My daughter, she's only 3 now, but, had a bit of trouble with these because of the just so many buttons you can press by mistake, and trying to grip both that and that at the same time, it's not easy when it's so squarey. This she finds much more easily. She can play with this unaided, which means she can now play iPad, she can play Start the Party. Now, differences between this and a traditional DualShock 3 controller, well obviously it doesn't have a big chunk of the controller. The buttons feel clicky rather than sort of spongy. I don't think these are analog. They might be, but I don't think so. At first I thought that felt cheap, but it actually... No, I think it's good. It means you definitely press them when you have. The new thing is the move button. Different games use that differently, but it does mean you can have a pinching motion now and sort of grasp at it. Other than that, yeah, the start and select buttons are interestingly on the sides and quite difficult to get to comparatively. I'm glad games don't ask you to use that a lot, because they can be quite awkward to get to if you're having to use the other buttons at the same time. So at least though children don't accidentally press them. Got this weird little data connection there, which I'm guessing is for the gun thing you stick it into, and it just charges with a mini USB like everything else on the PlayStation. It's much better than using AA batteries. The light on the end glows different colours. I've been told that it changes colour to make sure that it stands out on your background, so if you've got a green wall then it won't turn green. I don't know whether that's true, but it does seem coordinated with the game, so if you're playing Killzone 3 it goes red. It sort of fits in with the colour scheme of the menus and stuff, and I just think that was really neat. I've got to move on to the other failing of this bundle. It doesn't come with a navigation controller. I don't think that's a huge big deal, but I do think it would have helped show how serious they are about the motion thing. It's good that they're giving people options. I'll just explain why it's not necessary. The navigation controller is essentially just the left hand side of a controller. You could almost cut one of these in half. Don't cut one of these in half, and it would work the same. It doesn't have any extra buttons on, it doesn't even have gyros in it as far as I'm aware. So if you were planning on playing sitting down anyway, you can just use the left hand side of the controller and balance it on your lap. It's no less comfortable than just using the controller would be normally. The problem is when you're standing up for a prolonged period shooting things, then you'll need it. And yeah, that's what it's called, the sharpshooter. If you're gonna get the sharpshooter, obviously you will need a navigation controller as well, so I don't know whether it's necessary. It's entirely up to the individual person, but I would have preferred it if they bundled it in there and put start the party in. Basically the demo disc is completely pointless, especially when they're going to bundle so much shit essentially on the demo disc. Let's give an example of that. Kung Fu Rider. What the hell? If you're going to have a sort of casual game, maybe it's not trying to be a casual game, maybe it's trying to be an annoyingly picky arcade game, but to have to learn loads of new control gestures just to make a guy slide down a road, it's actually quite complicated. It's much more complicated than if you had tried to use the controller. I don't really know what they were thinking there. What was that other game which was good? The one where you make piles of stuff because you can move your hand in and out of 3D space as if they were actually in front of you. It's got a sort of Jenga-like element to it, but with more explosives. Jenga should involve more explosives. They're right to be trying to push this as a control scheme for serious gaming. Things like Killzone, once you've got it set up properly, it is really, really good. The problem is it can take 15-20 minutes to get it set up to your preferences, and a lot of people just aren't going to bother. If people go into a shop, try it, they'll just say, ugh, motion controls are shit for serious gaming, they're only for casual gaming, it's not accurate at all. Well, it can be accurate, and you can set it to be pretty much how a mouse would work, but probably slightly more immersive. It's just everyone's going to want it a bit different. Some people are going to want the auto aim turned on, which is a bit cheap ass, but it does make it much easier to play. You can just headshot, headshot, headshot. I don't think they're going to be able to make a standard motion control scheme which works for everyone. Game by game basis, it's going to be completely different. I think that's really interesting. So if I was going to review the bundle as a whole, I think I'd give it a 3 out of 5, which might seem a little harsh actually, but I don't think so. The hardware itself is easily 5 out of 5 material. It seems pretty damn durable. My daughter's been pulling it and chewing on it and stuff, and it seems to not give a damn. Seems a decent price, but the demo disc is pretty dire, and the lack of a navigation control, just for completeness' sake, is an excellent controller and a pretty decent bundle. And if you didn't have the camera already, then it's probably worth doing it, or if you want another one like I did. But otherwise, I would only buy the bundle if it's going to seriously save you money.